welcome. I would like to begin today with some deep breaths, using our diaphragm to take a full breath. So you can join me if you like. I would just like to start off by saying that I have recently uploaded my audios to various different podcast platforms such as iTunes, Google Podcast and Spotify, and the main app I use is a podcast platform called Anchor. This is how I distribute the audio. So wherever you are listening to this from, whether it is my YouTube channel or if you are listening on one of the other podcast platforms, it's just to let you know the options available. So I am on YouTube under the name Akira Onette, and you can also find my content on one of the many podcast platforms under the name Akira Onette, Uncovering True Being. That's the title. Also, I do have a Patreon account. So, if you feel you would like to contribute or support this content, that is simply an option that's available there for you. I also write poetry on my Instagram account. That's my name there. You can use Akira Onette, and for anything else there's my Twitter account as well. So I've been meaning to mention all of this information for several audios, but I'm more interested in the present moment content, so by the end of the audio that any mention or any promotion, I guess you could call it, of social media or things like Patreon, they leave my mind. I have no memory to mention them, so I thought this time I would mention them up front as well. And I would also add a link under my YouTube videos for PayPal, again, if some people may just want to make a one-off donation, a one-off gesture of support for the content as well. And for instance, recently I ordered I believe it's called a lapel microphone. It's a very small microphone that you attach to a piece of clothing, and I will experiment using that, and I'm experimenting now with this audio as I'm recording this directly onto my phone. I'm using the Anchor app to record, and I remember I had a Apple to USB adapter, so I've currently plugged in my USB microphone into my iPhone and I'm recording this way. And I thought this microphone is quite a fair size, so perhaps with the smaller lapel mic I will be able to perhaps record while I am not home, perhaps in my car or certain places, to see if that works. So I would say it's been a challenging week because of the job interviews I've been to. One thing I noticed with these, I will call them stressful events, for me attending a job interview can bring some stress with that as well. And I imagine if you've ever been to a job interview, you may agree with me there. But it did bring out more presence, more awareness, more alertness, because of the unpleasant thoughts which produced unpleasant emotions. These thoughts and emotions helped me to become present. For instance, the most challenging time was the waiting just before the interview has begun. Sitting in the waiting room, your heart, or I should say my heart, was beating very fast. I was sweating. Many thoughts were almost attacking me, saying that I wasn't ready, or how difficult the interview was going to be, or that I was wasting my time here. And even when the interview took place, I was present in the interview. I was speaking almost like I am speaking now, perhaps not as softly, but speaking with awareness of what I am saying. And there were times in the interviews where a question was asked and there wasn't much of an answer given to that question. And I was simply aware of that. I could see some of their facial expressions changing, perhaps some negative facial expressions. And I just simply remained in awareness. When a question was asked, I did whatever I could to give an answer to that question. But even in the mind's assessment of my answer being inadequate or not a good answer, there wasn't any negative residue after answering those questions. there wasn't too many thoughts of, oh, I should have said that, or I should have said this instead. I simply did what I could in that moment. Perhaps if the interview was a few hours later, my mind may be in a different state, and perhaps I could have answered these questions in a different way. Yeah. But instead of going into those many almost scenarios of the what ifs, I came out of that interview almost satisfied that I was simply present throughout that time, and that for me was the only important thing. Secondary was how my answers fared. I say this because if I was in my mind, I do not believe that I would have been able to give better answers than what I did. Because being in the present moment, you are not cutting the mind off. The mind is there, and it functions. Just as your eyes function, they see things. You can hear things. But they all happen in the space that you are, the space that you encompass. Almost like a faint sound in the background. So that gives you a little taste of my week, and I just had an interview this morning for a job, and I came out of that job with almost a decision to make of whether I would be capable of doing this job. Now, I haven't been accepted for this role, but in the interview I simply told that the job could be very tedious, very repetitive, and I was told to think about this before a potential second interview took place. So I find making decisions extremely difficult. Immediately my mind goes almost into a frenzy of trying to weigh up each decision, each option. Should I do this or should I do that? Should I take this job if it is offered, or should I not? And the mind gets itself in a real tangle, goes through many complex thought patterns, heavy analysis, and I find in that place no decision is made. There is simply going back and forth, settling on one decision, then suddenly the mind says, what about this? And then the mind moves to the other decision, and it almost like a pendulum, it goes back and forth, and during this process stress levels increase, the stress of the mind trying to figure something out. So this happened again today when deciding if this is a job I am able to do, a job that won't have a detrimental effect on my health, which is important to consider for me. And so, for the time being, I have stopped, or I have stepped out of my mind in regards to actively thinking on which decision I should take, or should I take this job or should I not. And for the time being, I'm just going to leave that and simply be present. In this very moment, a decision is not needed. And so I am going to leave that there for the time being, and perhaps during this day or over the weekend, something may come to me out of simply being. Something instinctual may tell me, oh, you should go for this, or it will tell me perhaps that perhaps I am able to do this, or maybe this will be too much for you to do, but or perhaps there won't be a decision to be made. I may be informed on Monday or early next week that I didn't make the second interview. So you could imagine some decisions take care of themselves, and some decisions come out of the present moment, not over the agonizing, the details almost. So that's not to say that certain decisions don't require thought or logic or reasoning, but from this example, I find it's best to step out of thinking when there is a recipe for stress on the mind and body. So that's what I've done. And I'm still tutoring my younger brother with his English. That's something I mentioned on the previous journal also. And that in itself is also a challenge, because my younger brother's attention is extremely short, and it's almost humbling in a sense, because what can you do when his attention keeps going somewhere else? It's almost a spiritual practice, because for a moment I may get frustrated that why can't he keep his attention on the exercise that we're doing? But this is just what is right now. And so I took action to try and bring his attention back. And to some extent, he did do some writing exercises, but on the other hand, his attention kept on moving away. So there was surrender to that. And surrender doesn't mean give up. It means this is what is happening right now. And the power that is with surrender is that you are not resisting something, if I was to get frustrated and other emotions, it wouldn't change the situation happening. It would only inflict suffering on myself. And even a story about how his attention is so bad, and I tried all of these things and it just wasn't working. That's one thing I'd like to make you aware of. How often do you tell stories about your day and your week? And I don't simply mean sharing your day with somebody, telling them how the day went, but are there any unnecessary stories that you tell about your day? Stories meaning you're reliving the emotions of that time. So, for example, if you came out from work and there was a parking ticket on your car, or you were cut off driving on the way home, or anything like this where it's retold in the same intensity as before, and you are almost suffering all over again with that story being told. But the reason why the story is being told is because it gives power to the ego, the egoic self, the mental formations in your mind that makes up the you. This happened to me today. You wouldn't believe what happened to me. Because in a sense, it takes back control for the ego, something that was out of control, a parking ticket left on your car, that has to be dealt with, but you didn't control that. But the ego always wants control, and so in this example it takes control with a story, and it maybe even be a story about the future. I'm going to write a letter, I'm going to appeal all of this. This is absolutely disgusting, it should not have happened. They're going to be sorry for doing that to me, I'm going to want some compensation. It's all a story which produces thoughts, unhealthy thoughts, negative thoughts, and those thoughts produce emotions in the body, suffering in the body. What tastes good to the ego, but what ultimately causes you pain. I've noticed also this week that I've been having some pains in my body. So I will look to address these pains. And also my energy levels have been very low. So that's something I can address also, and I'm going to address these in a simple way. Again, there is no story created about all of the pains in my body I experienced this week and how that affected my day. But perhaps I can look at my nutrition. Perhaps there is some more healthier meals I can eat that will help with my energy. Maybe some exercise, something I haven't done as much, perhaps that will help my energy levels as well. But the way what we can call problems can be approached, they can be approached in the present moment. What can I do now? Or is there something I can do later that I can plan for later? Which means that plan has been made and I don't have to think about that plan anymore. When a time comes to do that particular activity, then again you would do it with awareness. You would always be in that space of being when doing that activity. So I think I will wrap this audio up here. And again, just to mention, feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm not on there very often, but I do check in with social media now and again. Often I will send out a tweet when I have uploaded a new audio, so if that was something you would find beneficial, feel free to follow, etc. Whatever it happens to connect with another user on Instagram or Twitter and so forth. And I will leave it here, and I will speak to you again very soon.